Hello everyone. In this video I'd like to give you a little walkthrough of Kyma installation to better understand the whole process. This might help those of you that want to install Kyma on your own cluster that is not necessarily managed Kubernetes cluster, like the one that can be ordered from public cloud providers. Obviously it's hard to cover all the different flavors of environments, but I will try to give you some hints on how to configure installation itself and perform some basic troubleshooting. Now, I'm pretty sure that you know what Kyma is if you are trying to install it, but just to have an overview of the components that will be deployed during the Kyma installation, it's worth to check out what Kyma has to offer. So we have a service mesh with Istio, the observability part, like monitoring, tracing and logging. Dex is serving authentication and authorization. We have a service catalog that is implementing Open Service Broker API, kubeless, and different messaging capabilities like application connector and event bus. For the purpose of this video, I've prepared a script that is available on my GitHub that can be used to install Kyma with single command. It is basically gathering all the steps from the documentation and putting it into one flow. As a prerequisite, you need to have kubectl and Helm available on your machine, and target kubeconfig needs to be added in .kube/config file in your home, which is by default used by both kubectl and Helm. So if we get a closer look at the script content, there is a workdir definition at the top. This is the place where all config files and certificates will be kept. Then Kyma version is defined. This script was only tested with version 1.4.0, so if you'd like to use it anyhow, it is always best to check installation documentation first for any differences. Also treat the script as a boilerplate. For sure there is a lot of room for improvements there, and it was created just as a starting point. If we go to the main part of the script, the only parameter that is accepted is Kyma cluster domain base. So for example, Kyma console will be exposed as console.name of the domain base you provide. As a first step, both tiller and Kyma installer configs are downloaded for the specified Kyma version. Then we will generate wildcard certificate for the cluster. You can always obtain valid certificate from trusted source, use Let's Encrypt or maybe corporate CA if you have one. But in this case I'll be just using self-signed certificate for the CA and sign my wildcard certificate with it. As a part of same section, key and certificate that we just created are passed as environment variables. Next we are creating config map that with proper labeling will be read by Kyma installer to configure some of the global settings. This is the way how Kyma allows to inject parameters to the Helm charts used in the installation process. You can edit both main chart parameters as well as subcharts. More detailed instructions can be found in Kyma documentation in configuration part and section Helm overrides, where the overrides mechanism is described. Charts used during the installation are kept in Kyma project Kyma repository in resources directory, so you can always go to the specific chart and check its description and parameters it is using. Moving on, next step is tiller installation in kube system namespace. Just remember that if you have tiller there already, it will be replaced. This might be problematic if someone else is using it, as Kyma is deploying tiller with client certificate verification. So we need to have certificate for your Helm to be able to contact tiller. That is why script is waiting for tiller cert's job to be finished to get tiller CA key and certificate so that we can generate own certificate for our Helm. To make Helm actually use those, we need to set proper environment variables, which is done as a part of helm tls.sh script. In the final step, you can edit Kyma installer resources before they will be applied, and trigger the installation itself. Installation will be monitored using while loop that is printing installation custom resource status. Alright, so let's start the installation now. I'll pass some example domain. And we should see all the steps being executed. Now the script is waiting for the tiller certificates generation, which should be finished by now. And now we have last chance to edit resources that will be applied for the installation. So let's jump to the last resource, which is the installation resource. If you are not aware of custom resource definition and custom resources, and those are just extensions to the Kubernetes API that allows users to define their own objects that will be treated same as pods and deployments, for example. And this is exactly how Kyma is doing the installation. So Kyma installer is just an operator that is reading the configuration of the installation from this resource, and it's applying it on the cluster. So we have components part here, where all the components that are supposed to be installed are listed. We can edit those. So we can, for example, decide that everything after backup is not needed. So we can comment out those options. You could do this with other components, but well, I guess you cannot get rid of core, for example, or some other crucial parts of the Kyma installation. So if we now save it, the installation should start. Okay, and we have a first problem. So let's try to debug it. So we should basically look into two pods during the installation. One is the installer itself, and the second one is tiller. So let's first check out the Kyma installer. It should be in Kyma installer namespace. And here it is. So now we can get logs for it. And error says that the cluster essentials was already installed and we should first delete it. But the real problem is that there is some resource that was already created, and it was already there, so the installation did not succeed. So anyway, we can just try to delete this this installation. Let's copy the name. Yeah, and this is the first problem. So we just started new bash environment, so we don't have the Helm settings. So we need to first go to the Kyma installation directory and just try to first apply the Helm settings. So if we check out the script, it's setting all the certs so that Helm knows that he needs to use the client certificates for connection to tiller. So we can just source the script. And now we should be able to delete. Yeah, until we have the newer version of Helm than the tiller that is used on the cluster side. So cluster is using version 2.10, but we have 2.11, so we can always install the correct binary or just do the helm init upgrade. This will initialize the tiller once again, but with the newer version. So it takes a couple of seconds for the pod to be recreated. And if tried again, we should be able to delete it. It's still creating probably, so let's try again. And now it went through. So you could still check the tiller logs. So this time let's get pods from namespace cube system, because this is where the tiller is installed. I guess we can limit the resources. Yeah. So this is exactly the one we are looking for. So let's get some logs from it. The installation is still ongoing. We can see that the our status is changing, and as you saw, it tried even here. You can see whenever it fails, it tries the installation from scratch by just checking which components are already installed. So it will be checking with some delay. It will be checking it every failure until Kyma is installed, basically. So just to have more detailed information of the installation process, it's good to just put follow. Then we will see what is going on from tiller perspective. So what services and other resources are being created now. So now we can see that a service for Istio ingress gateway is created, and we can check it what's actually spending on. So let's get service this time from the namespace Istio system, and we can see that there is one load balancer service that is pending getting IP. So we need to remember that by default all the services will be expecting LBAS, so load balancer as a service, for getting external IP. If you have some other ways to expose your applications, like some external load balancer or any other setup, you might want to change this, but this is the default behavior. So it takes sometimes for the LBAS to be initiated, so I will just skip it and wait for any other interesting event during the installation. Okay, so we are back with Kyma installed status, so seems everything went fine. So let's just check the services on Istio system. Let's look for load balancer type, and we got IP for one of our load balancers, and same for Kyma system. We have two load balancers here. So everything seems to be fine. So let's just stop the script. There are still some things that needs to be done after Kyma installation, and those are covered by the after install sh script. So the script will query for values from the cluster, and based on it you can add DNS entries, for example. So it's hard to guess all the options to add entries to your DNS, but at least if you could use ns update, the file would look like something like this. So first you need to point to your DNS server, and then update add entry for wildcard, DN name first, something like this, and put the Kyma IP here. And then another one would be update at API server dot same base DN. This time with the IP of API server. And then just send. So I already did that for my cluster and it should be available, but we still need to add CA certificate to the browser. So this can be done in privacy and security part and certificates. Then we do view certificates and import. And I already pointed to CA file with the name, with the certification authority Kyma CASS that we just created. So we select trust this CA to identify websites and we just added the certificate. So then when we go to Kyma console, it shouldn't complain about any invalid certificates, and seems that everything is fine. We can see the Kyma objects here. We can go to one of the namespaces and check if, for example, public cloud providers brokers are available there. And they are here, so everything looks fine.